All right, here we go. Welcome back to the show, Josh Whippy.
What's up, everybody?
How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Doing good. What about yourself?
Oh man, I'm so good. Life is good. Jesus is good. Yeah, man, everything's good. You know what? Last time you were here, you were actually, I think you had just celebrated your anniversary. Was it
And you
14
did.
years?
And you
And
did
now
the other
we
day.
got back from celebrating our anniversary. We
That's
got back
awesome.
on Tuesday. We went away
Was
for a
it
few days.
13 years?
13, man.
Wow. That's
13.
awesome.
Yeah, man, it's been good. Time's flying. I'm sure you could attest to that.
Well, yeah. In fact, my wife and kids are in Myrtle Beach right now.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Jess, that's where my wife is from. She's from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That's where I met her after I left Bible school. And I met her there. We came and then we moved up here and got married. So she's visiting her parents that she hasn't seen in like 2 years because
Wow.
of the pandemic
Because
and
of the
last year
COVID,
not
yeah.
yeah. So they're down there, her and my three daughters, and they actually have been there since Monday, and they're going to be there for about 4 weeks, which is crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Are
but
you so you're on your own completely for
yeah,
4 weeks?
yeah, that's crazy.
What is
I've been eating a
what
lot
is
of
gonna
hot
happen?
dogs, a lot of hot dogs, a lot of burgers, chips. It's been not great as far as the
It's
diet.
been not great.
Yeah, the diet is not doing so great, but yeah, I mean, we're redoing our kitchen, so I've been flying around trying to pick stuff up for the contractor, trying to save some money there so I'm not paying for him to go do it. And then we're just trying to get that done, and I am going to go down in about a week and a half here. I'm going to go
Awesome.
down for 5 days. So what's crazy is I got tickets. This is going to sound nuts. I got this is how messed up our world is right now.
Mhm.
The other day, I bought 250 feet of electric wire, and it was $150 for 14.2. $150. Now, get this, a round trip direct flight from Buffalo to Myrtle Beach is cheaper than I paid for that stinking stuff, that electrical stuff.
Wow.
Go figure. It was
Dude,
like
how did you do that?
$130.
That's a crazy deal. Was that is it a special airline or something?
Frontier, which I don't think
Frontier, yeah, Frontier's well, yeah. Yeah,
I
if
don't
you can
know.
find the flights between the right cities, like, it's really cheap.
Yeah, I
Really good deals.
I'm trying. I'm trying to. I was like, well, I can't be away from my family for that long. There's just no way. I had to go down. So I looked up,
Yeah, man.
and I'm just like you. You pay extra for bags. So when my wife went down, I just put a bunch of clothes in there. So I'm just literally going probably with
Smart.
my phone and my charger and my laptop, and that's
Yeah, man.
about it.
Yeah, man, I just flew and it was just a one way. I flew to Houston and I think it was like 150 bucks. And like it was really cool because I was literally just I flew out there to pick up my mom. Well, actually my mom lives in Texas and she was coming out to visit us. So I flew out there just to drive back with her. So I
Mhm.
flew there, she picked me up from the airport and we just drove straight back here to Alabama. And so it was like probably one of the first times in my life where I traveled with nothing. Like it was pretty awesome. It was pretty
that's
legit. I loved it.
that's what it's gonna be like for me. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's nice to fly out of Buffalo too, because that's not too far from me. And if anybody listening knows Lovejoy Church, a good
Yeah,
friend of
man.
mine, Kevin Ormsby works there now. And I did the math. It's 3 miles away from the airport. So either my buddy Kevin will drop off or I'll get an Uber, and it's still cheaper than paying the $50 a week for the parking at the airport,
Yeah, brother.
Doing stuff on the cheap.
Come
Got
on,
to.
man. Life hacking.
Yeah.
So how's life been, man, since last time I saw you? It wasn't that long ago. But yeah.
Doing this kitchen, that's the big thing. My wife wanted a new kitchen when we bought this house, and when I first got married, this guy came up to me and said these wise words. He said, "Happy wife equals a happy life."
Come on.
So
I've
I'm
heard
like,
that somewhere before.
yeah. So we're doing that. She's happy. It was pretty dank, man. 1980s kitchen with a terrible layout. Had like a kitchenette that we didn't use because we have a dining room. So we knocked
Yeah.
down the wall and knocked out all the cabinets. Did that on Saturday, and doing the demo thing is fun. and now it's the slow, doing electrical and the stuff you can't really see, but it's important. There's probably a sermon in that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotta
For
be,
sure, man. Yeah. Taking care of the stuff that's underneath that you don't see. Yeah, for sure.
for sure.
Are you
It's
doing
also
it
ministry.
yourself? Like, are you doing all of it, or like, do you do that stuff?
No, no. I don't know if you knew this, but I
Do you
have
have some buddies helping you out, or are you
yeah.
getting it done professionally?
I play this fictional character called Rob the Builder.
Okay.
If you
Yep.
look up Rob the Builder in my name on YouTube, you can find it. Rob the Builder thinks he's great at construction, not to be confused with Bob the Builder. That guy's a
Right.
jerk.
Yeah, no, completely unrelated.
That
Yeah.
guy's terrible. He
Yeah,
steals
of
dreams.
course.
So you could just see this character, and it's very close to who I am as a person. I know nothing about construction. So he screws up all the words and thinks he can do everything, and he's terrible. And we did it for a sermon series that we did called Building a House of Prayer. So yeah, it's you got to check it out. But no, I can't do any of that stuff. In fact, yesterday my contractor, who's also a friend of mine, was like, "Hey, I can't." He was basically saying like, "I gotta go pick up your cabinets today." With his worker, and I'm adding up the cost of them driving an hour away to pick up these cabinets and come
Yeah.
back and all that. So I'm like, "Can I do it?" So he's like, "Sure." So I that's the kind of stuff I'm doing. The simple a monkey could do it. Hey, go pick up that piece of wood and give it to me. That's kind of the stuff. So
Yeah.
go drive here. Can you go get us some coffee?
Yeah.
I'm
Hand me
like an
those
intern.
pliers.
Yeah.
Hand me those pliers. I'm 90% sure I know what pliers are, so I'm gonna take a shot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know what
Yeah,
a flathead is
yeah.
because it's flat.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
I don't know.
and f
I know like my limitations. I always think like, man, it would be cool if I got into that and learned it. I know that I
yeah,
probably have the mind to do that kind of stuff, but I don't want to. I
yeah.
am though jealous when I see guys build things and put things together. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. I didn't unplug it. Um,
Oh, I didn't either. Let me
I'm in
see.
the.
Turn
Well,
this
it's just
ringer
gonna
off.
ring.
Yeah,
It's just I know my limitations. I want to. I when I see people build stuff and they do it on their own, it's like awesome. But that's just not me. I can't do it. Do you do that? Do you build stuff?
no, I'm probably in the exact same boat as you. I don't know how to do anything. Every once in a while, I'll have the opportunity to do something where I'm building something with my hands, and, like, if it's simple, I can kind of, figure it out and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I don't know how to do any of that manly stuff,
I
unfortunately.
When I watch them doing it, it looks complicated, but it also looks easy, and I guess that goes with anything. You look
Yeah,
at it and you're like, "Oh, I could play football," and then you
right,
can't, you know.
right. I've got a friend who he actually, like, he remodeled his house, like, by himself by watching YouTube videos on how to do
Wow.
stuff, like, how to I'm sure he didn't do electrical because that would be crazy, but as far as the craftsmanship and doing the floors and all, like, cutting the tiles, like, doing all that kinda stuff,
Wow.
which would just kind of intimidate me. And again, like you said, I mean, probably if you spend a little bit of time and figured out how to do it, you could probably figure out how to do it and it would, get it to look somewhat decent. But he got like really into it and really perfectionistic with it. It took him a while,
Wow.
but he did it all himself and he was like refusing help because he just had this thing like I started this project and I want to finish it by myself and he got really kind of like very much into the process of like, I want it to look perfect. I want it to look like this. I don't want anyone else to be involved in it. And, but it was cool. It really impressed me because I'd never seen him really do, we grew up together and I never knew that he could do stuff like that with his
Mhm.
hands. But he didn't really know how. He just kind of like, it was all just watching YouTube videos. But like, I've figured out a whole bunch of stuff over the past couple years just by watching YouTube videos, but not that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
me
It's like,
too.
you know, uh,
My
video
dad
stuff,
told
podcasting
me
stuff, all that.
I was telling my dad I was doing that, like with car stuff. I'm like, yeah, I just looked it up on YouTube. Actually, no, it was my old air conditioner unit outside of my house. It
Yeah.
stopped working. I looked up on YouTube how to do it. So I told my dad, and he was just like, he's like, YouTube is the new dad. Like, you don't
For
call your
real,
dad
man.
anymore. You just
For
look it up
real.
on YouTube.
Yeah, man, like last week, we had to replace the ceiling fan in the bathroom, like the ventilation fan, and it's, like, embedded in the ceiling, and I had never seen what one of those looked like before, like, inside, so but, like, underestimated YouTube like crazy. My wife just like, "Let's just YouTube it," and she YouTubed it, and I was looking, I'm like, "We're not gonna figure this out," because it just looked to me to my, untrained eye, it just looked more complicated than what it really was, but we YouTubed it, it was like a 4-minute YouTube video, and we had it done in, like, 5 minutes. We're like,
That's
"Oh,
awesome.
that was awesome. YouTube is fantastic."
It really
Don't
is.
underestimate YouTube.
Well, what's crazy is when I figured out what the problem was, it was a capacitor, which reminds me of like Back to the Future. But
Flux
uh,
capacitor.
yeah, so this thing basically, I think it's called capacitor, but it like it would get the fan going. So the fan needed to go. If not, it would shut off because it got too hot. So if you could kickstart it with a pencil, that's what you knew what it was. So I figured out what it was. I called my uncle who works at like a building supply place, and I told him the part I needed, and he's like, "How do you know how to do this?" I said, "YouTube." He's like, "It's not going to work." I'm like,
It's not
"Yeah,
gonna
it
work.
is. It is going to work." And he goes, "The part was like $11." And I got the part, put it in, took me like you said, like 5 minutes, and I stick it in there. It worked right away. All I did was send a video to my uncle
Come
saying,
on.
come on.
That's awesome.
It's
So good.
What's going
Well,
on with your church? How's things
man,
over there?
yeah, things are pretty great, man. We're just trying to kind of keep up with Jesus at this point. It's like we've got basically three different church plants kind of in the works at the same time at different stages. All like sort of beginning phases of them, some a little bit more advanced than others, but yeah, man, like we're working on the biggest, sort of project that's in our minds and that we're like starting to put more attention to is a church plant in Houston or in the Houston area. We don't have the exact spot nailed down yet, but so that's going on, man. We're excited. We're excited. We're just really looking forward to everything that God's doing right now.
Have you noticed like an influx of newer people coming to your churches like in the last couple of months?
Uh Definitely online for sure.
Hmm.
For sure. Not in person, but definitely online.
I think the last time we talked, we were discussing like some of the negative effects of COVID and the toll it made on some churches, stuff like that. People
Yeah.
leaving. What I've been finding recently is the people who left. Um, you know, say what you want. There were some issues there, obviously, but I felt like God kind of was like, "Yo, don't don't like be sad about that." It
Mm.
wasn't you, it wasn't
Yeah.
the church, it was something going on deeper within them.
Yeah.
And while I started to try to like just accept that and realize that, then I started realizing, man, there's a lot of new people coming to our church and they're awesome. Like,
Mm.
I've been so blessed. This guy in my church, him and his wife sold their home. They're about a mile and a half away from me. Sold their home, and the couple that bought it started coming to our church, which is like, what are the chances here? That's pretty cool. So we're blessed, like to see newer people coming in that moved into our area. A lot of people are leaving cities and
Yeah, man.
moving out to either suburbs or even out like where I am in a rural area because of what happened. I think maybe also because cities are kind of getting full, that you want some freedom and fresh
Yeah.
air.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, man. One of the things that was birthed this year in our ministry was in EChurch, and we mean that in like we actually mean in EChurch, like an online church community, not just come to our live streams, but where we'll provide counseling for people via Zoom meetings. We'll even do things like uh, travel to the person for things
Wow.
like, if it's like for, weddings and baptisms and things like that, or, send somebody who's closer, like, in that area or whatever, and even with that, we're still kind of in the beginning phases of it because it was launched during COVID. But like last year with the lockdown and everything is kind of where it started to come to fruition. But yeah, man, there's just a lot of really exciting things going
Were you
on right
guys
now.
thinking about doing that before the pandemic?
N- okay, so we had talked about that kind of thing for a long time before the pandemic, but not with that level of clarity. It just seemed like when we got into that position where we had to make some moves, that all kinds of, like, creativity started coming out of it. Like, all of a sudden, it was like there was this, sort of magnifying glass on it, and the picture just became so much more clear, and it
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, well, this is it," and we started to hear from God more clearly on how to do things and how to launch things and all of that kind of stuff. So, like, we had talked about it we had talked really seriously because we weren't doing anything online, man, at the time. Like, when the
Yeah.
when the lockdown started, we were not even live streaming or anything. And all of that just kind of happened very quickly. We had kind of, I think, put it up on this pedestal for a long time of, yeah, we gotta wait, we gotta, like, we're moving toward this, but we gotta upgrade our equipment, we gotta make sure we have all this stuff in place. And then when, it's just the way that it goes. Like, when you get into a situation where all of a sudden, like, you have to do it or you don't have
Mhm.
church, it's like, all right, well, I guess we don't have to be so picky and limit ourselves and all this stuff. Like, let's just go with what we have. And then from there, we got better and we were able to, little by little acquire some more equipment and stuff like that. And it's just been like sort of a work in progress. But, as I think this happens in so often just in life in so many different ways. But when you're kind of in that place where resources are not there to the extent that they used to be, or you're kind of backed into a corner or whatever, that, like, there's just so much opportunity there to just
Mhm.
tap into the creativity of God and to really see him just bring good out of a negative situation.
Right. No, that's cool. I uh I don't know. I think I might have mentioned this on the last podcast, but we had all the stuff to do the live stream. We just weren't doing it. So it was almost that made us do it. However, on the flip side of it, I wondered what you thought about this since you guys are kind of pushing into it rather than running away from it.
Mm.
What do you do with, there's something about the in-person part of church. There's like there's a it's hard to really describe, but when I would say, like, the biggest thing for me is that you're around people that probably disagree with you on a lot of things. And when you're at your home or like Schuler
Yeah,
there
man,
and in your car doing a drive-in service like they did in the 70s, you kind of miss that iron sharpens iron thing. So what are you
for
guys
sure.
doing to try to tackle that as a problem?
Yeah, man. So that's the big question, right? And that is the big dilemma. And I think part of it was part of our sort of slowdown in the process was not just logistical, it was that as well. It was that question of, we saw a need to create before the pandemic. Like, we saw a need to create opportunities for people to experience church that maybe, like, they just, because of their work schedule, even, like, they couldn't come to church on Sunday. And so we're like, okay, well, we'll
Mhm.
open services throughout the week, we'll have Bible studies, we'll do that kind of thing. But then, still seeing the disconnect. And, for people that can't leave their house because of a sickness or an illness, or even for simple things like lack of transportation, or, whatever the case may be, like seeing the need, uh kind of, adapting with the changing of times and things like that, to, try to meet people where they are, but at the same time not wanting to give people excuses. Because, you know one thing that for sure happened this past year with the pandemic is people definitely got comfortable going to church in their pajamas on their couch at home, or
Mhm.
laying in bed, or
Right.
whatever. And then now that a lot of churches have, reopened and they're able to go back and meet in person, it's like, well, I kind of like this better now. and it's just easier, and the last thing that the church in America needs is to be easier. Like, that's the last
Sure.
thing that
Yeah.
any of us need, is to just like, well, let me cater to like every person. So like I see both sides to it, and I do think that that really is the biggest dilemma. So to your question, one of the things that we're doing with the e-church is we're really trying to create it as a community where it's not, you're not going to be in in a sense, like, of course we can't control what anybody does, but in a sense, like, our goal, and people know this from the beginning when they, when they sign up to become a part of the e-church, um, they know that this is not an invitation to disconnect and just do church on your own.
Right.
This is an invitation to be a part of a community. So we do that through like Zoom meetings. We do that through um, different like online sort of gatherings that we have that are essentially face to face in the way that you and I are face to face right now, but with more people. And then the idea for every person is that they'll come to some kind of a, regional event service at least like once a quarter or something, where there's some personal face-to-face interaction. But like we do interviews with people, before, like we have like a little simple form that they can fill out to be part of the e-church. But then the idea is, one of the pastors or a couple of the pastors will contact them, and we'll set up like a just face-to-face Zoom meeting interview and just find out like where they are. And we kind of want to know, why is it that you're looking to be an e-church member, as opposed to finding a church in your city where you live,
Mm.
or something like that. Because obviously, like, the thing with the e-church is it's not just for people that are here locally where we live, it's potentially all over the world. And just trying to get a feel for where people are at, because we're not looking for people who are trying to escape relationships. You know what I mean? So it's that's a tricky thing. Those are like definitely like some turbulent waters that we're trying to navigate, because even in some of the stuff, like, I've had to think, because I'm creating commercials and different like advertising and things like that for the e-church. And so often, like, I catch myself promoting it in a way where I'm like, the a certain kind of person can listen to this and it sounds great, and it's like what they need because of the situation that they're in, where they can't get out of their house and get to church or whatever. But I can also see how someone else could take what I'm saying and use it as an excuse
Hmm.
to, just like stay home from church and not have that interaction, which is so important. I mean, it's at least that I would say 50% of why we go to church, is for
Sure.
the interactions with people. It's important that we worship God corporately. We can worship God on our own. Absolutely. But it's so important that we worship God together as well. And so, yeah, we're constantly sort of, minimally like course correcting and trying to, okay, how can we say this better? How can we present this better? Um, so trying to reach people where they are, but at the same time, not trying to give all those excuses, and just trying to find, practical ways to do that. Um,
Yeah, for I think it comes down to discipleship, really,
for
um,
sure.
because we're kind of in that boat now. We're trying to figure out how to do a better job of discipling, because before the pandemic, we were doing still like a Sunday school format
Hmm.
where, the kids would have their classes and the adults would have their classes. But at the time, our church was 375 people, and I would say only about 75 people, which actually is not a bad number if you think about it.
Right. Yeah.
75 to 100 people were involved in Sunday school. If you look at statistics, that's fantastic. But we still
Right.
felt like, is there something else? Now we do small groups, we do that too, but our small groups are more, they're not that teaching, discipling model. And we're not really sure if that's what we want them to be anyway. We want
Yeah.
those to be more of like a life group, a care group, or something of that nature, where it's more just interacting with people, like kind of like you were describing in community. It's
Yeah, man.
tough though, because we don't really want to go back to the model of doing Sunday school, but then again, we feel like we have to in order to do discipleship. Now, for us in our area, like a Wednesday night service, just doesn't make sense. A Wednesday night,
Okay.
you know, discipleship thing through the week. We actually found that it by us doing it on Sunday mornings, we had a better turnout than if we did it midweek because they're coming to church anyway. Just come an hour earlier, and you
Wow.
can have some discipleship.
Yeah.
So we'll probably go back to it. I will say this though, if you were to tell my grandfather in law down in Myrtle Beach that like I told him once, he asked me, "What kind of church you go to?" He's from like Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you know, our church is like a non-denominational, spirit-filled, blah blah blah. Okay, okay. You guys got Sunday morning service? I said, "Yep." He's like, "Okay, you got Sunday night service?" I said, "Nope." "No Sunday night service. Are you serious?" Like, "Yeah, no, we don't have Sunday night service." And he's like, "Well, you have a midweek, you have a Wednesday night Bible study, don't you?" I said, "No, no, we don't have that." "Yeah,
Mm.
what kind of church is that?" Like he could not wrap
Wow.
his. And then I showed him a
Wow.
picture of our church. You know, we're definitely, I mean, we're not like Hillsong or some huge production thing, but we got some lights. We got, you know, like different
Yeah.
colors going
Yeah.
on, stage lights and stuff like that. It blew his mind. He didn't even know what to do with that. He's like, "That ain't no church. What are you doing? Blah, blah. I can't
Wow.
believe you got drums in that church." Like he's old school, baby. But
It
but
is sorry to interrupt you. It is crazy though. I've been thinking about this lately. Is like it's crazy how churches like man, like the amount of production
yeah.
that is like that goes into a church service right now, like the level of equipment, like the amount of money that's like spent on
Mhm.
soundboards and lights and screens and mixers and like all these different things. Like it's really I mean, obviously not I mean, we're not at that level like
Right.
our church is not at that level, but the amount of like the excellence of
Mhm.
production, people who have like really serious degrees in like sound engineering and all this kind of stuff, like running these, you know, Sunday morning and midweek productions in churches, like it's really professional level stuff. Like it's just crazy. Like I was thinking about that lately, like looking at some of the different like churches and like just the vast amounts of equipment, like probably hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of, you know, equipment and different things. And just like the level of excellence in production that's happening, just like in general in churches today is just kind of like mind-blowing, you know?
It is, but I don't know if you felt like this. I feel like the other side of that
Mhm.
is that excellence. You know, we preach excellence, excellence. We
Sure.
want to have, you know, the shortest announcements that are the most dynamic, and you want all this stuff. The problem, though, is that can easily turn into perfectionism, and then what happens is you lose people being real, like you lose the genuine who you are as a DNA of your church if you go so far into that excellence, which I have found before the pandemic. I was definitely in the perfectionist camp by
Okay.
saying we just want excellence. I was in the
Right.
perfection camp, and I would like just I mean, here's the truth. It was robbing me of joy. It was
Mm.
robbing my church of having that organic feeling of like anything could happen. Like I noticed that once we got back together and I wasn't like printing out I was I mean this is how bad it was. I print out a script pretty much for announcements for the person on announcements
Uh-huh.
and follow this script. And then when I just gave up with that because of the pandemic, I was glad that we were together. There was so much life to the fact that the
Mm.
announcements weren't good. Like it was so much it was just better that things
Yeah,
were
man.
happening. Sure, it's not as I'm not saying I want it to be like who cares and no order.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not saying
No, I
that.
get it.
But I took it to this level that was robbing me of just appreciating my church for what it is. And then it was robbing them of having that unique organic experience of us just being real.
Yeah,
So,
man.
like, I don't know if I don't think I shared the story with you, but I'm going to tell you anyway because it's a good story. And if I did, you can stop me.
I won't stop you.
So we have a lot of younger adults with younger families coming to our church, and one of them went to high school with me. They weren't churchgoers growing up really at all. They started coming to church, you know, kind of like they always. You ever find those people that say like, "Oh, if I go in that building, I'm going to get struck down by lightning." It's like, man, you don't know me at all, so like I should be
Yeah.
dead by now. They were kind of like in that camp, and we were doing construction on our new building, and we're um, we're in the time of worship, and somebody, I think it was the pastor's wife, had a word that she felt like the congregation needed to hear, and she's up there, and all of a sudden, this lady in my church, um, she let's just say she had been drinking. Let's just say it that way. And she comes and grabs that microphone out of the pastor's wife's hands and turns around to the congregation and starts just spewing her emotions out at the whole congregation. And it's like that moment that you're like, is she half in the can? Like, is something going
Uh-huh.
on here? You're trying to figure it out. Now, my pastor could tell something was up. So Pastor Jeff jumps up, puts his arm around her, right? That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Puts his arm around her, and he's trying to get the microphone out of her hand, but she's got like a Jedi death grip on that
Yeah.
thing. Like she was not letting go for anything. And he says, he's trying to like wrestle it out of her hands, and she's still going. And she says, this is what she says. She was going on about her daughter and all this stuff. And she goes, and I woke up this morning and I said, God, I'm not going to church. And then she goes, but then I heard God say to me, hey, get in the effing truck and go to church. She did not say effing. She
She
said the
did not
real
say
thing.
Evan. Yes,
So now you're like, oh, and I look over at my wife. I'm like, did you just hear it? She's like, there's no way. I'm like, and you look around the congregation, everybody's like, did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? And then Jeff grabs the mic, and here's the perfect part. Here's what he says. He says, let's just pray for, hey, it's obvious that she's in need of help right now. We'll call her Sandy. Sandy's in need of help right now. Let's pray for her as a congregation. So there you
yeah.
had like 350 plus people just lifting their arms towards her and praying over her.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I've shared that story. Have I?
Yes.
I did?
That was the second time I've heard that story. So,
Dang.
it might have been on the podcast or it might
Oh,
have been
wow.
in conversation.
It
But
could have
either
been.
way, it's
But
fine.
the perfect part of that story is they looked at me and said, you know, later on, years go by, and they told me the best thing about the church was when that happened because it told me that I would it told me basically that I was welcome there, that I wasn't
Yes.
too messed up, that if you could still appreciate and love her and not kick her out of the church after that, then you would still love me and care for me. And when I was pursuing that perfectionism stuff, I was getting rid of that type of messiness that is unique and needs to be in our churches, whatever your church is like. And now the F word probably doesn't need to be said in every church, obviously, but
Yeah, probably
God
not.
can use that stuff all the time. God can use our screw
Yeah,
ups.
man.
And if we're trying to make everything like a production, then you lose that. And the church is supposed to be a community of people with baggage and all. And if we get rid of all the things that look bad and try to say that's not welcome here, then we lose part of our DNAs of churches. Um, you know,
Yeah,
I
man.
I feel like that's the opposite way. So I've been trying to have this more of a I'm more easygoing, and
Yeah.
because of that, I haven't been putting as much effort into our live streams. We're back outside. We've been having church outside now for 5 or
Well,
6 weeks. It's a lot of work, and this coming 4th on, July 4th will be our last Sunday outside. We're going back in, thank
it's
God,
getting
get
too
some.
hot, right?
Bro, dude, bro. I mean, I had like 6 fans on the stage the other day, and I knew I was preaching, so I got my, TD Jakes, towel because I knew
Yeah.
I was gonna be preaching at them. So I got that all ready, and it's just too hot. But
Yeah,
some
man.
people love it outside, some people hate it. I'm a little bit I love it and I hate it, but I'm excited to go back inside, get some AC.
Yeah, we did, like, 1 or 2 outside, like, when at the beginning of the pandemic last year, we tried it. We were like, "Nope.
Mhm.
We're not gonna we're not gonna keep this up." It's just really I mean, it's hot here, but the weather's really unpredictable here too, like, it rains a lot,
Mm.
especially this time of year. Um, yeah, it just wasn't gonna happen for us, um but yeah, I agree with you, man, 100% with what you're saying. I think that I think that there's a way to have the excellence in the equipment and the production quality and professional people and all of that without losing like the heart of why we're there. And unfortunately,
Absolutely.
so often I think that we do. I think that
Mhm.
the church has made that mistake so many times to where like the services are so tight and everything is so like da, 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 da,
Mhm.
that like you really don't leave room for the Holy Spirit to have his way and to do what he wants to do. And like I've heard people say this in different ways, but you know, something to the effect of, well, you know, we could do church the way that we're doing it right now, and like it could be done. We could just invite some people in that don't even know the Lord and just give them the list of how we're doing things right now, and like you wouldn't even know the difference because
Right.
things are just done in this sort of, you know, business kind of a way, like boom boom boom, we go from here to there. We were actually joking. We were joking about it, but it actually hit me really hard because I think that there's so much truth to it. We were joking in our Bible study last night on the live stream about like uh you know, rushing through the salvation call to
Mm.
get to the offering, like rushing through the, you know, the times of the service that are so important
Mm.
for giving people opportunity to connect with God, because oh, I got to make sure that I have this much time to talk about the offering because that's sort of where the value system is, you know. And
Mm.
so we were kind of like uh I don't remember how it got brought up. It sort of got brought up in a joking way, but then I just sat there like, I couldn't talk for, like, 30 seconds because I was just
Wow.
sitting there like, "This is like, that's for real." Like,
Right.
that's for real, the stuff that we do sometimes with just misaligned priorities, just doing things because it's always been done that way, or doing things because we feel like that's the way it has to be done, or because that's the way this ministry does it. And I loved what you said even about, like, the way that you guys do your small groups and the way that you do, uh, like, you don't do the Sunday nights and you don't do the Wednesday nights and stuff like that. I think that paying attention to the culture of your people and
Mhm.
where you're at and how it works where you are, certain cities or certain sections of the country, like, it doesn't make sense to do it this way. And just because it's always been done that way, or because other people do it that way, or because this ministry that you look up to so much does it that way, like that's their vision, like that's how they're carrying it out, that's how they're accomplishing it. But it doesn't mean that that's what God is saying for me and for my people right now. And so just like even tuning into that and not just doing things for the purpose of the big overall production, like who's watching us
Mhm.
on TV, who's watching us out there, but like who's in front of me right now in
Right.
this place. And just making sure, like, I think that the most important thing that we can do as pastors and leaders, you know, as leaders in churches, is to facilitate a move of God, to facilitate an encounter with God, to just kind of through, whether it's through the preaching of the word, through the worship, through the offering, through the announcements, through like the different things that we do. But like our goal should always be him, right? Our
Right.
goal should be to open that door and to bring people closer to that opportunity. Not that they don't have the opportunity on their own, because of course they do. They don't need a pastor to get to God. But like, you know, when we're in that corporate setting, just doing what we can to kind of like not make it about me, not make it about what needs to be done in terms of the agenda, but to give people that opportunity to experience God
Well,
in a
I
corporate
think
way.
absolutely. I think for what I've been realizing recently is that God's not calling us to be successful as a church. He's calling us to be faithful as a church. And as leaders, I think
Yeah,
we have
man.
to be we have to be authentic with our church DNA. So we have to be realizing what is it that is about my church, because like you said, there's a lot of like if I copy this formula, then maybe we'll be a big church, and then they lose the sight of their DNA as a church and being faithful to the Lord. So I've been finding that for me, it's like, okay, I could look at what Stephen Furtick's doing. I could look at like Judah
Yeah.
Smith and do that kind of stuff. And not to say that there wouldn't be good ideas, but there's also like there's a spirit within each church that's a little different. Now, thankfully, my church has a kind of a fun, easygoing, fun, goofy side to it. Like, obviously, we're serious about the Lord. I don't want to get any emails, but we're obviously God's doing incredible things. But one of the things He's given us is this humor, uh, that
Yeah.
to be able to like. I don't want to get away from that. I
Mhm.
don't want, there is a freeness, there's an openness that we have that I'm sure some churches would say, well, those things are a distraction.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, well, those things are kind of part of our church. Like,
Yeah.
they're part of the DNA. Did I talk about the flag lady ever?
It sounds familiar. I think so. But
about the
again, that
lady
might have just
running
been to
over.
me.
Yeah, it could have been the lady running over people with flags. I just, one of my
I don't think you
buddies.
talked about that last time.
No, one of my buddies. He had just started coming into this church again, totally unchurched in his 20s. He was following a girl, and he came the first week, and this lady who's no longer with us, she was awesome. She was just like, we called her Bubbles, man. She was just happy all the time. And I don't know, she picked up a flag and decided to run around the building. Well, nobody's following her, which she didn't care. So she's running around the sanctuary with this flag. And this kid pops out of an aisle and she just mauls this kid over like a
Really?
bulldozer. Yeah. And my
Dang.
buddy watched that and was like, "Whoa," and she just kept going, like, she didn't even stop, and he was
I'm
like,
on a
"Dude."
mission for the Lord. You gotta keep
Exactly.
going.
"This place is awesome." So, he was like, I'll give it another week." Maybe, the next week, my dad, who is not a flag guy, like, we probably have, like, 3 or 4 of those people in our church, right? My dad
Uh-huh.
is not a flag guy, and he feels like God tells him to take the American flag and start waving it. Well, in the process, as he's waving it, he gets it caught into the chandeliers and now it's stuck in there. So during worship, here's my father trying to fish out an American flag from the chandeliers. And my buddy's in the back watching this whole thing going, this church is amazing. You never know
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
yeah.
Like, it's crazy. And I don't know if I can't say whether or not God told my dad to do that, but I can say that because we allow for some of those things, which some churches are like, "Oh my God, I could never let that happen. It would be so
Right.
embarrassing." I'm like, my friend literally comes to our church because of those things. And
Wow.
he was not church, had no idea about any of it. He just thought these people are real.
Hmm.
So I'm just saying, I look at this younger generation, this Gen Z culture, they they're even better than millennials of sniffing out whether something's real or not. They can
Wow.
sniff that out
Come on.
so stinking fast, and they want it to be genuine. So they know what it's like to have fake YouTube or fake TikTok videos. They're sick of that. They don't want that. They want the real deal. So if our churches are all trying to be prim and proper and look, like the sexy youth pastor or whatever, like
Right.
they don't they don't want that. They just want somebody who's going to be authentic and real and have community with them. They
So good.
value community. What's also interesting about Gen Z is millennials, we're kind of known for jumping headfirst into something and then going, "Oh, I can't do this." But Gen Z, they will not commit to something until they've totally thought it through. They count the cost. And when they say yes, they follow through. They will
Wow.
follow through. Like, as a
Yeah.
culture, generally speaking, they will follow through. And our generation is not that way, but they want the real, they want the authentic,
Yes.
they want it to be not fake. So I'm trying to think, because our generation definitely wants perfection and excellence. That's definitely us, and definitely Gen Xers. But there's something about this Gen Z that is just different. It's just
Yeah.
unique. And I believe that God is calling us as pastors and leaders to be able to think about those generations coming up, because that's the future church. They're those kids right now in high school are our future pastors. And
Yeah,
they're going to do
absolutely.
things a lot different. They're going to do
Yeah.
things almost opposite. Like, if you think about right now, if you ask somebody graduating high school today, we just did our graduate Sunday last week, all of them, okay, are either going right into the workforce. They're going One guy was, I think, going in the military, another guy was going to a community school, another girl was
Okay.
going into a community school. I didn't hear any big time colleges at all. And the reason is they've watched they've watched the previous generations go into extreme
Mm.
debt,
Yep.
that they are like, I can do this and go to, transfer to a bigger school later to get my master's or whatever they need to get that done. They're considering the cost on everything, including church. So when they're
Mm.
driving by and they're looking at your church in the next 5 to 10 years as an adult, they have to, and they're going to use, like you talked about, online presence. They say right now, it used to be what was it called, from something to pew, it was called site to pew, website to pew, like that's how
Yeah.
they find. Now it's live stream to pew. So they're
Mm.
watching your church. They already know who you are and what you're like before they even walk in.
Wow.
So that Gen
Yeah,
Z
man.
is going to be watching your church and saying, Is this a church that is genuine? Is this a church that's real? Do I want to be a part of this before they even step into your door? They already know what you're like because of your live stream. And that's a good thing.
Bro, it's so good. You said that so beautifully. It's like, man, that thing right there, man, that authenticity, that genuineness, that's what people are looking for. And it's I think that the world right now, like even this Gen Z, generation, like everybody's hungry for
Mhm,
that, right? Like
mhm,
everybody's hungry for something real, for something authentic. People are hungry for hope. People are hungry for God without even knowing that it's God that they're hungry for, but they're just looking for something that's real. They're looking for that. I mean, you look at everything right now, man. Like everything is revolving around community. Like we'll create apps and like multi-billion dollar companies around the idea of community. Like everything is going that way. Like the cryptocurrency, like some of these coins, they work just because there's community there. Like there's no real value to Dogecoin, but there's a community behind Dogecoin that makes it real, that makes it something that people are getting rich off of. It's working, even though it doesn't have anything. There's no utility behind it. It's just like the community behind it. It's and that thing exists everywhere in society. And so when people can find real authentic community, like you can say, okay, people might show up because they got invited to this, big deal church production kind of a thing. But most people are not going to stay in a church
mhm.
just because it sounded good. Or
Right.
most people are not going to stay because the lights were cool.
That's
People
right.
are going to stay when they get impacted by the love of Christ and when they have that sense that these people are real and they actually care about me.
Absolutely. Like, that's why, we can create our own welcome teams and all that's great. But
Mhm.
it's our churches that need to be our church, like our family as a church. That's the one soil that we have to cultivate. Number one is trying to give it's a family atmosphere, not saying that you want a small family church. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You want it to grow, I'm sure, but that should never leave that feeling of home, that feeling of
Mm.
family, that feeling of, like you said, like being genuine and honest. And I was just wondering, because I've been in more board meetings than I can even shake a stick at. There's just so many. And the biggest thing, I wondered this when you were talking, is what if we started saying, as we're planning things or coming up, what if we just ask the question, what is our church's DNA? Like, how does
Mm.
it fit with this new idea, or how does it fit with this problem? Or even me, I'm kind of thinking out loud now as we're talking about discipleship. What is PCF, my church? What is our DNA? What should we be doing? How does this fit in? Not like what works, what's trendy, what's cool, but what would work with the people that God's called us to minister to.
Yeah,
That
man.
that is the bigger question, you know. And I feel like that question doesn't get brought up a lot in churches. I feel like we're busy thinking about financial or resources, or thinking about logistically, how can this work? And the last thing on the list is like, is this us? It should be the first thing on the list. Like, excellence should be
Wow.
on the bottom. It should be
Mm.
still part of the list. I'm not saying it shouldn't, but
Sure.
when those priorities get flipped, I think that's when we run into problems, headaches. Um,
Yeah, man.
it's almost
Yeah.
like I'm saying what is part of your DNA, but really it's, Holy Spirit, where are you leading us?
Mhm.
I don't want to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
I can't be faithful unless I'm submitted. So I could come up with all the great ideas, and part of being submitted is saying I don't know everything.
Mm. Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough for
Yeah.
leaders, I think, for all of us.
Yeah. I love that, man. I can't be faithful unless I'm submitted. That's so good. Yeah, I think any what you're saying is right on. Anytime we step outside of our assignment, we open ourselves up for just all kinds of stuff to go wrong. Anytime we step outside of like you're calling it DNA, you're calling it, going where the Holy Spirit's leading us. Anytime we step outside of that and then we make it about, oh, I want to do this because this is what so and so did and it worked really well. And I think we even talked about this last time too. There's nothing wrong with, like, emulating someone else or getting ideas and stuff like that. Like, of course, there's nothing wrong with any of that. Like, there's times where, like, I'll see a friend of mine, who's a pastor, do something, and it just so resonates with my heart that I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. Like, we got to do that. So of course we get ideas from other people, but when you step outside of your assignment on a consistent basis, like the assignment that God has given to you, the vision for the work that He's doing through you, when you step outside of that just for the sake of doing what's popular or whatever, then yeah, I think we get into all kinds of problems and issues, and then we
Well,
start having to, like, be the ones driving it, like you said.
so if you use that illustration of the vine, right? So Jesus
Mhm.
uses this illustration of the vine, and he says it twice. He says, "Apart from me, you can do nothing."
Mm.
But when we have the assignment and we have an idea of the things that, like, God's given us a vision, God's given us this stuff, he doesn't say it's going to be easy to be attached to the vine, right? The problem is that we disconnect and start chasing after other things and trying to emulate other things. Like, it's weird. Our first, like, as people, as sinful creature, create sinful people, we we tend to try to look to other people, like, what should I do, what should I do, what should I do, what's he doing, what's he doing, because things aren't happening, the fruit's not being is not coming right away.
Mm.
So then what in process is now we disconnect from the vine. Now what's interesting is when Jesus was talking about remain in me, he says the word remain in that passage a total of 8 times. So it's got to be
Wow.
important, but it's never that Jesus is going to disconnect from us. That's not the concern. He's here. He says, "Remain in me as I'm in you." So he's here. He's solid. There's nothing. He's faithful. You don't have to worry about that. But his concern is that we're going to disconnect from him. So
Yeah.
like I said, you can't be faithful unless you're submitted. And the biggest problem, I think, is when we get into these moments, like even like I am in right now, in our church, as I was talking about, um where we're like, what should we do with discipleship, how do we have it, why is it that I'm looking to disconnect real quick to go find something else instead of relying on the vine where everything comes from. That's where my vision comes from, is from him, it being attached to the vine. That's where the vision comes from, the hope, the excitement, the everything I need is in the vine, except I want to get the fruit that that other tree has or that other branch has.
Yeah,
Why don't
man.
I have that fruit? No, he called me
Yeah.
to this place. I'm
Yes.
this branch and I'm connected to the I am not going to disconnect from the vine. And
Mm.
I look at it as kind of like nobody thinks about vines anymore. Like, we don't think that way. Obviously, they did in Jesus's culture. That's why he talked
Right.
about it. But
Yeah.
I would say it's more like Wi-Fi, right? So you're connected
Like
to the
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. You say yes to Jesus and you put in the password. You're connected, right? So you're connected to the Wi-Fi. And if you get out too far, the perimeter,
Yeah.
you lose connection.
Yeah, man.
And it's not Jesus that's moving. He's standing still. It's us that falls away and then we lose connection. And he's begging and pleading us as Christians, as leaders, as fathers and mothers, as daughters and sons, like he's begging and pleading us to stay connected to him, to
Mm.
stay in that Wi-Fi connection. Because the biggest issue, in my opinion, is we start wandering. Or
Yeah.
I got ADD. It's like, what is
Yeah,
that, a
man.
squirrel? Like,
Whoop,
I'll do that, and it's
whoop.
like what you said was so good. Is like you got to remain on the assignment. You stick on the Wi-Fi, you stick connected to him, and you remain on,
Yeah.
in that. Now, your fruit might look different. Your fruit is going to look different than my fruit,
Yeah.
and our church is going to look different from your church, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's funny that we always want to replicate and get the same results as other churches, and that's not what he's called us to. He hasn't called us to successfulness. He's called us to faithfulness. So, and I can't be faithful if I'm not submitted and if I'm not staying connected.
Wow. Come on, man. The Psalm 91:1,
Yeah.
he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And, we're safe. We're safe where he has us. We're safe when we're with him, when we're connected to him. And like you said, he never disconnects from us. That's the fallacy in a lot of people's thinking, is that God disconnects from them when they mess up. God disconnects from them when
Mhm.
they forget to read their Bible. God disconnects from them when they sin. God doesn't disconnect from any of us ever. Like, he
Mm-mm.
is the vine, and we've
Mhm.
been grafted into him. And but yeah, like you said, man, so often in our own thinking and just chasing after different things and things that we think are right, and most of the time we have good intentions, but a lot of times where our focus is off. And so we'll do different things and we'll disconnect. He who dwells in the secret
Mhm.
place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty.
That's right.
There's such a place of insulation and protection. Not that things will never go wrong, but like there's this place of protection and confidence when we're where He wants us to be,
Mhm.
when we're abiding in Him. Abiding under the shadow of the Almighty. Not every once in a while, but living our lives in that place. And there's such a peace and a confidence that comes from that, that gives us the ability to carry out the assignment that he's given to us.
I
And
think
yeah,
that
good.
it's funny that word you were using, abide, is the same as remain. It's actually from a Greek word, meno, I think it is, meno, and it means to remain, to abide, but another one is to live.
Mm,
Now think about it in that, like you're talking about, living in your life, everything you do, you're living with Christ. You're living with the Spirit in all aspects. Like, that to me, life is life. And apart from, what does Jesus say in that, right? If you disconnect, like if you disconnect from me, you're like a dead branch. And people, I always thought it when I was growing up, like, he's going to throw me into fire if I disconnect from him. No, no, that's not the point. The point is, he's saying is like, you disconnect from me, you're a dead branch, and there's nothing to do with a dead branch
mm.
except throw it away. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
man.
want you to do that. I want you to remain in me. I want you to stay in me, but you keep disconnecting. Like that's, there's no life in that. And it's
Yeah.
like you were saying, it's like it's not going to be all hunky dory and gumdrops
Hunky
and
and Dory. Okay.
hunky and dory. It's not going to be that. It's going to be life. And
Yes.
life, and what I found, this is so true, is that true life happens when storms and turmoil and those things happen. That's when we are so, while we're connected to the vine, things are difficult, but there's life in it,
Mm,
despite the fact that there's things happening that we don't want. Don't disconnect, because when you
yeah.
disconnect, you die.
Yeah.
Apart from me, you can do nothing. But we think in our heads, well, if I just came up with the right thought, if I came up with the right idea, then therefore everything's going to, maybe I could save this ship from sinking. And
Mm,
it's just not the way things go anymore. I mean,
y-
that's what Jesus said. Apart from me, you can do nothing. He's like literally telling us, you have to remain in me. You have to live in
come
me.
on. Yeah, man, it's so good. I've been so we've been talking about like excellence and success and these different, these different things, and I think so often our idea around these things is so wrong.
Right.
And when we need to know, it's so important for us as individuals, as churches, as families, like to understand what our assignment is, what God has called us to do. We've all got the assignment to abide in him. Like that's
Hmm.
foundational. We've all got the assignment to grow in grace. We've all got that. And then from that, what's my specific,
Hmm.
assignment? What is God calling me to do right now in this season, throughout my life, whatever, and just recognizing that, like, as long as we're connected to him, we're abiding in him, and we're living in that place, like you talk abiding, living in what he's called us to, that is success, man. Like,
Yeah.
when I define success based on Stephen Furtick's ministry, which is
Hmm.
great and amazing stuff that's going on over there, if I define my ministry based on that, then I'm not successful. But if I define success and I define excellence for me based on, what, I'm doing my
Hmm.
best with what God has called me to do in the season that I'm in right now. And so I don't have to measure up to somebody else's,
Right.
place in life. I don't have to measure up to what that person's doing. I just have to measure up to what God is calling me to do. And even
Well,
in that, I'm imperfect, but you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, success is not having a big church with this many people or being able to, impact this many people. It's, no, okay, I'm having an impact by being obedient to what God is calling me to do right now. And if I do that, there's gonna be growth as the byproduct of it, but the getting to a certain place, like, it's not that once I get there, then I'll be successful. As long as I'm being obedient to what he's called me to do now, I am successful.
Well, it's interesting how the world defines success, right? So
For
the
sure.
world defines success as saying you're independent, you're wealthy and comfortable, and then the
Mhm.
third one would be you're powerful.
Yeah.
But the difference is that the kingdom of God and how he determines success is that you're dependent on him, you're not independent. You're content with what you have.
Mm.
You're content, like the being discontent is being like dissatisfied with your circumstances. Being content is being happy despite what your circumstances are. So if you are dependent on him, like you can't live without him, and you are content with him. And the last one, instead of being powerful like the world says, you are being like faithfully submitted to him.
Mm.
So you are actually
Yeah.
doing the polar opposite of what the world determines as successful. Now, he calls those things successful, but he's really looking for faithfulness. And that's what is success, is the faithfulness,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Love it.
I find to me, like when the world says independent, you got to be independent, do things your way. That doesn't work for me. I don't produce good fruit that way. I produce Josh Whippy fruit. That's not good. And when I'm not content and I'm chasing comfort, like I'm chasing things to be better for me. And if I don't have this, and what's going to happen? I wish I had this. I wish I had this. I wish I made six figures. I did. Okay.
Mm.
That's not producing fruit. That's
Yeah.
not success. And if I'm faithfully submitted to him. Now, it's almost like baking a cake. We got a lot of I love cake, but whatever you put into that cake to bake that is what's going to come out, and that's what it's going to taste like. And
Sure.
I want to pursue the success or the faithfulness of God in my cake. And I don't want the junk and the poo poo of this world in my cake,
Yes.
because whatever you put in it, that's what you're baking. That's what you're making. In the end result, that's what it will taste like. Now, I can already tell that there's some people that are like, yo, whoa, I probably have put some things bad in my cake. Like I've got my recipes all jacked up.
Sure.
And I believe that God's saying, hey, throw out the cake. Let's do a new one. Let's
Mm.
make a new one. And I feel like when we realize, we talked about this last time, that this world is completely upside down from the kingdom of God, that's okay that the world doesn't look at us as successful, because like you
Yeah,
said,
man.
we are being faithful to the mission, faithful to the assignment that he called us to. And I wanted to say also, it is very true that everybody, whether they're a pastor or whether they're just a children's church worker, or whatever it is, maybe you're just at home and you live in a retirement facility, whatever those things are, you are to bear fruit. So that means you do have an assignment, because God's saying that if attached to me, you'll bear fruit. That's the promise. You will
Yeah,
bear
man.
fruit. And what you ask, it will happen, because he's saying you're attached to me, my will, my plan, my vision. So the question isn't, oh, well, that's great. Duke and Josh are pastors. They're going to have a mission. Well, our mission is different than yours. God's
Yeah,
got
man.
something different from you, but you are to bear fruit. You're
Come on.
going to. So yeah, I don't know. I always
Yeah.
feel like some people, they put that on. Oh, that's the pastor. What they're supposed to do. No, you're supposed to do that. Like even if you're not a pastor, you're supposed
Absolutely.
to be bearing fruit.
Absolutely.
And he's got a mission for you. He's got something for you to do. And it could be just talking to your neighbor across the hall that drives you crazy, or whatever. Maybe that's
Yeah.
prophetically saying something to somebody right now, and they're like, "Oh man, I hate that you said
Uh,
that. Bob is such a jerk."
Get up, turn the
but
podcast off, go talk to Bob. It's gonna be okay.
but when you look at life and realize that we are
Yeah, man.
creating something and we are to bear good fruit and attach to him, then that goes, you take that to a personal level. It's like, man, I need to remain in him. I need to stay connected to him. I have to
Mm.
not just jump and go on Facebook and find out what I'm supposed to be doing and look up inspiration. But, I do find it funny, while we're looking for inspiration, we forget that God is the creator
Come on.
of the world. Like he
Yeah,
created
man.
every single thing he's the innovator. He is the innovator. He comes up with ideas faster than anybody else can. So why am I going to a source of a person when I should be going straight to the source of the God who created the universe?
Exactly. Yeah, and I was gonna say when you were talking, it's like, the world, says you're not successful. It's like, okay, Whose standard is that, you know? It's like,
Mhm.
you're not successful. You like, okay, like, who are
And
you?
based on
This is
their
yeah,
description of it, we're not. That's
yeah,
fine.
of course. But, like, what does God say?
Mhm.
You know, what does God say about you? What does God say about the assignment that's on your life? What does God say about your obedience and your faithfulness? Like, you know, and as long as we try to measure up to someone else's version of what we're supposed to be, there's never going to be that contentment. There's never going to be that, you know, that happiness that that, yeah, that contentedness that you're talking about. I think there was a phrase that they used to throw around at Elam. I think it was like unsatisfied satisfaction, you know? And
Mm.
it's just like we're satisfied in him, but that doesn't mean that we're satisfied to just stay where we are and never go forward and never increase, because there's always an opportunity, there's always an open door for more. And
Mhm.
I really do believe that, like, um man, like, even in that, um being faithful to what God has called you to do, you might not be the richest person on the planet, but
Mm.
if God has called you to do it, he's gonna provide for your needs,
Mhm.
and he's gonna go above and beyond, you know, because I believe, it's, Ephesians 3:20, um, I can't even think of what it says. I know that doesn't usually happen. Usually I forget the reference and forget the verse, but in this case, give me a second here. Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that
Mhm.
we can ask or think, according to the power that works in us. Exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think. That's the nature of God. There's so many different, you know, scriptures that we could point to, that point to the abundance of who
Mm.
God is and how generous he is and how good and how faithful, and he gives us good gifts, and you know, he's wanting to increase us, he's wanting to prosper us,
Mhm.
he wants that.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, that shouldn't be at the expense of obedience. It shouldn't be
Right.
at the expense of doing what we're called to do, of what he's set out for us. And I
Mhm.
just think that, like you said, there's so much just infinite creativity with God, that if we would be content to trust him and to follow his plans for our lives, that, you know, I really believe in, and that the these material things and these different things that we're talking about, they really do so often become the byproduct of just faithfully serving the Lord. Those things shouldn't be the goal, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't want you to have good things.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, it doesn't mean that he doesn't want you to experience those good things.
Well, while the
Um,
world is saying that wealth and comfort and fame and all that stuff is like success, that's what they measure it by. What they're unknowingly advocating for is discontentment. They don't even know they're doing that, because
yeah,
I read in a study, this is crazy. It said, money, the reason why money doesn't bring happiness is because you can always get used to the money that you make,
yeah.
but basically they said that people never grow tired of having admiration from others. So
Mm,
what they're actually chasing for is something you can only get from God. That's the only thing. That's where true contentment comes from,
wow.
is God. So while they're chasing after the things that, like you said, could be the byproduct of some of those things, while they're chasing after that and making that the goal, they're actually losing the truth, which is what their heart longs for, is from basically attention from God and hearing
Yeah.
from him, which is, it's sobering to think about, because how many times in our lives do we get sidetracked and start trying to chase after things of this world, you know?
Yeah, man. I love something that Bill Johnson says. He says, you know, how much money is too much? Well,
Mhm.
it's not an amount, it's whatever replaces trust. And so for
Mm.
some people, you know, that's 50 bucks in their wallet, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, if I get an extra if I have an extra $100 at the end of the month, it's like, I'm
Mhm.
good. I'm alright. I'm not, and my dependence on him can go out the window for such a small amount. But then there's people, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't do anything to their trust in God.
Nothing. Yeah.
And so just learning to be dependent on him, to be confident in him, to trust in him, to be content in him, wherever we are. I mean, obviously, even Paul said that, right? I've learned in whatever
Right.
state of life I'm in to be content, and so
Mhm.
just
Do
learning
you
how
know
to
what the
do that.
secret? Because he says it's a secret. Do you know that? he says there's a secret to that. I
Mm.
discovered the secret to being
Yeah.
content in all things. What's
Yeah.
funny is before he says that, I think it's in verse 8 of that chapter. Before he says that, he says, finally, brothers and sisters, think about what is good, what is noble, what is, he goes through this whole thing. And I find it's funny. He's telling us the secret is focusing our mind on things above, right? On God, and also things that are good. And how many of us like wonder why are we not content where I'm at, but we're so focused on the negative. Now, I had a shower thought a couple weeks ago, and this is where that came from. Had the shower thought. It's like a great idea, and you can't write it down, and you hope that it sticks. So what it was,
Yeah.
it was negative people are searching for negative things. Positive people are searching for positive things, and both of them find what they're looking for.
Yeah. 100%.
So when Paul's telling us to think about what is good, right, to put our mind and set our hearts on things above, he says that, I believe, in Ephesians. I might be wrong with that. Maybe it's Philippians still.
To set our say the verse again.
Set your mind on things above.
Colossians
Colossians.
3:2.
Bad pastor. There you go.
Oh, you're good,
Um,
man. That's just one of my favorite verses. So
but as he's sitting in jail, he's telling us in Philippians that he's found the secret of being content.
yeah,
And he's he's literally thinking of good things. And I wonder how much, like, how powerful is our mind that we could find negative things really fast. And
yeah,
I
man.
find all the time, if I'm thinking about, like, even football, something trivial as football, if I'm looking for the bad stuff, I will find it. But if I look for the positive, I'll find that too. And I'm done looking for the negative.
Come on.
The negative will find itself. I don't need to go looking for it, because I can tell you right now, like right now we're building this house, or we're not building a house, we're redoing the kitchen. I could find the negative if I really wanted to, and I've been
Yeah.
actively every morning being thankful for what we have, thankful for the
Mm,
progress, thankful for, because what am I doing? I'm setting my mind on good things. I'm thinking of good things. I'm thinking of the positive, and it makes a
yeah,
big
man.
difference, and I'm thanking God, which is part of the process.
Yeah. Well, look, bro, that's meditation. That's what biblical meditation is. It's meditating, it's contemplating, it's thinking about, it's musing over
Mhm.
the word of God, the promises of God, what he said, what his word says, what he says about us.
Mm.
And it's just keeping that in front of you. And yeah, I love that passage in Philippians, and then even, Paul says in Philippians as well, he's like, rejoice in the Lord
Mhm.
always. And again, I say rejoice,
Just in case you didn't
writing
get it the first time, I'm
like,
gonna say
yeah,
it
right.
again.
Exactly. Rejoice in the Lord, like, always. And it's just, like you said, man, in that place, from writing from a place of imprisonment, from, like, being in a literal hellhole, and
Mhm.
writing those words of encouragement to the other believers who, like, were
Mhm.
probably not in prison like he was at that moment, but you know what I mean? Like, being in that place and not allowing it to translate into depression and anger and all these different things, but
Mm.
just becoming aware of that. I love what you said. Just being intentionally grateful for what you have. Thank you
Mhm.
for what I have, Lord. One of the things that I do now, when if I start to feel sick, if I start to get a headache, or I start to get that those little, like, scratchies in your throat, where you just feel like, oh
Mhm.
man, I'm gonna be sick tomorrow because I'm starting to
Mhm.
feel it. Like, whenever that starts to happen, like, almost immediately, or hopefully it's becoming more and more immediate, but what I do is, like, I very quickly recognize, God, I just want to thank you that I'm your child, that I belong to you,
Mhm.
and I just want to thank you right now for divine health. And
Yep.
I just begin to thank him for divine health, even when I'm not feeling it in that moment, but I just begin to thank him for that. What am I doing? I'm not denying the existence of my headache, because
Right.
that's not helpful. Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't have that headache, and like, no, I'm not denying the
That
existence
doesn't
of the
work.
problem,
Yep.
but I am denying the influence of the problem in my life by
Mhm.
focusing on a higher truth, by
Right.
focusing on a higher reality, which is the promises of God, the word of God. He promises to keep me in divine health. He promises that by his stripes I'm healed. He promises that he's my healer, that he's Jehovah Rapha. And so, like, my circumstances are saying something different. It doesn't mean that God's word is not real,
Right. Yep. That's
right?
right.
Like, it's
Mhm.
not that he's wrong because my circumstances aren't lining up. So what do I need to do? I need to get my mind right. Set your mind on things above, not on things on
Mhm.
the earth. And so I set my mind on him. I remember to think about those promises and the things that you're saying, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are praiseworthy, think, meditate on these things. I think that we
Mhm.
get weird often with the word meditate because all kinds of other, religions and practices use meditation, but like it's in our book, it's in here, like, and it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you just disconnect your mind from reality. No, meditation is what you're thinking about. If you're thinking
Mhm.
about your problems, you're meditating on your problems. Like,
Right.
if you're going through your day playing out all those, just like, how you can just replay a scenario of a negative outcome over and over in your mind, and it's just sort of that, oh
Yep.
well, what if this happens, what if they when I get the test results and it's like this, and L like,
Mhm.
I get it, I get that there's that the fear and the anxiety associated with that, but as long as we go down that negative, just
Mhm.
downward spiral of what if,
Right.
and, playing out those scenarios in our mind, it becomes, I say this all the time, so forgive me, but it becomes this, like, I think, really counterfeit way to try to be in control of our problems that are outside of our control by,
Mm.
like, thinking about it over and over again, and
Mm.
living that scenario out in your head and thinking about the negatives and if this happens and that happens, and it leads to more anxiety. If you're meditating on those things, meditation always produces something. So if you're thinking about bad stuff all the time, you're going to be
Mhm.
producing more and more worry or guilt or
So
fear or
basically, you're
whatever it
saying
is.
you're meditating whether you know it or not,
Yeah, man.
or admit it.
Yeah, like,
That's a creepy word.
let's just call it like this, that, like, internal conversation that you have with
Mhm.
yourself all day long,
Right.
and I always tell people, like, that's the most important conversation you'll have today is the one you have with yourself,
Mm. That's
you
good.
know, because that's what we do, life and death are in the power of the tongue. We talk about that, but we don't recognize that, the talk that's going on inside our head is just as potentially dangerous or
Mhm.
powerful.
Take every thought captive, bro.
Exactly, man. Yeah. So, I'm with you, man. I believe we're always meditating
Yeah.
on one thing or another. And so we've got to at some point take the responsibility, because, like,
Mhm.
God's not just gonna walk into my brain and fix my thought life.
Right.
No, he's given me what I need. He's given me all the instruction that I need in his book.
Mhm.
And so if I'll actually fill my head, my heart with his word, with his promises, then I've got something to pull from.
Mm.
Or when I'm in the moment where I've, got some bad news that was presented to me, what do I do? Do I just roll with that? Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
this is what it is now, and then just immediately try to, like, settle into that new reality? Or do I fight with the promises of the word of God? Do I, like, I can go in here and I could find a promise that counteracts that bad news that I just got. Again, I'm not pretending I didn't get the bad news or that it's not a real problem. It is a real problem. But I've got a higher truth that I can stand on.
Mhm.
And so finding scripture, finding a promise from God, going back to, like, maybe if you're fortunate enough to have, like, prophetic words written down or recorded, or if you keep a journal and you have things written down that God has showed you, just, like, taking some responsibility over our thought life. Like you said, taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Christ isn't taking my thoughts captive for me.
Right.
He's given me instruction, though, on how to do it
Right.
and how to take, control and to take authority back by making it about him, by focusing on him,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
like, we don't have to be all devil focused and demon focused and casting out demons around every corner and I bind you in the name. Like, we don't have to be all like that. Like, spiritual warfare is done from a place of worship.
Mm.
I believe. I'm not saying there's never a time to cast out a demon. Of course there is. Jesus did
Well,
that.
I mean, a great thing is, what was it? Paul in prison there, they were singing. They were
Yeah,
singing, and
man.
that's
Love
when
it.
the gates like
Love it.
broke open,
Love it.
or
And
the
that
jail
was a
cells.
choice, right? It was a choice. They
It
could have
was.
sat there in their problems and just been, like, pissed off Forgive my language,
Yeah, but I
but
heard somebody say once, your praise has to be bigger than your problems. Like,
mm,
your praise has to be a problem for your problems.
come on with it.
And that's when, I mean, in that, think about that scenario, you're in jail. Now, what's also funny is that the jail cells blow open and they don't leave.
They
They don't
didn't even
leave because
leave.
their circumstances looked like they were going to get better, right? But they actually used it to witness to that jailer. Like, that was, they were so into what is God's
Yeah, man.
will. They were so connected to the vine to bring it back to that,
Mm,
that they knew that those things opening was not for them to be released, but for somebody else to be released from the sin
yeah.
that they were in, you know?
Yeah, and then, like, they got out anyway
Yeah,
after, but they did it the right way. That it's
they
so
did.
cool. It's so cool. The amazing thing about that too is that, like, they're like, "Hey, don't kill yourself," because
Mhm.
right? Am I I'm not mixing up stories, am I? The guy was basically about to
I think
off
you're right.
himself because he knew that he was in
Yeah.
huge trouble. Like, "No, no, no, do yourself no harm. We're all still here."
Mhm.
Like, not
Yeah.
just Paul and Silas, like,
Mhm.
the prison was like, what do you have to do? What kind of authority do you have to have in that moment to, like, a bunch of prisoners,
Right.
they're not running away. Like, what happened in that place, man, when they were singing, when they were praising God, when that earthquake happened? Like, I don't know, maybe people were just, like, so frightened they didn't know what to do. I
Mhm.
don't know. But, like, they're like, "No, we're all still here, man."
Yeah, that's
It's
awesome.
crazy.
So I
God's
do
so
have
much bigger
things to
than we
plug
think.
today.
Say it again?
I got things to plug today.
Dude, let's
You
plug
always
some
ask me,
stuff.
how do you ask that question? What do you say?
Uh, I don't know. Like, do you have anything you're promoting maybe or something
Okay,
like that?
okay.
I don't say it
I
in a
got a couple
in
things. Can I have a couple things?
yeah, man.
Okay,
As many things as you want. Let's plug some
first one,
stuff. Oh, put that away.
simple power. Learning to draw from the supernatural resources of heaven from a guy named Duke Lamastra. And in the back, it's a very good book. This is when you were in. This is let's see. Duke Lamastra is the executive pastor at Legacy Church International, located in Mobile, Alabama. He serves the body of Christ in the areas of pastoral leadership, worship, church planting, and missions. And he's an author and an international speaker with passion of raising up leaders and releasing them into the assignment and destiny. So if you'd like more information, you can buy this on Amazon.
This has never happened to me before,
There
Josh
you go.
Whippy.
Well, there it is, happening now. So that's my first thing to plug. My second thing to plug is a
Thank you.
show on Netflix that was stinking awesome that I watched it all in 2 days called
Uh-huh.
Sweet Tooth. It's based off of a comic from 2009, Sweet
Okay.
Tooth.
Haven't seen it.
Awesome. It's kind of fantasy driven. Uh, and, I was going to tell you this earlier, but we don't have time for it today. In every single thing you watch or see in pop culture, always be thinking two things. Number one, where is the gospel in this? And number two, like, what is this saying about our culture? And when you
Mm,
go and watch things, not just for entertainment value, but you look at it in an apologetics kind of way. What is this saying about my culture? What is my culture
mm,
saying? And what is their heart? What do they need? But also, where's the gospel in the story? And I think you'll find both those things pretty easy in that. It's about a
mm.
boy who is a hybrid. He's got like antlers like a deer on his
Yeah.
head, and it follows him, the story of him in a post apocalyptic world. Like, things are all messed up, things are terrible. But that's a really good series.
Mm,
There was that. The other
awesome.
one, the final one I want to do. Well, first of all, I want to tell everybody I am drinking Arnold Palmer. Used to be zero, but now it's called diet, so there are some carbs in it. But it's not bad. 4 carbs, pretty good. I'm not drinking beer at
Are
church.
we just are we just finding stuff to plug right now? Like, are
No,
we just looking around the room? Let's see.
no,
What do I
this is
got?
real. This is real stuff. This is real stuff. I
I've
did
got,
think
these
though.
pens by I don't know if you can see this or not, Papermate. Shout out to
Uh,
Papermate.
Shout out to Papermate. No, I'm bringing this up because people saw me drinking it. They're probably like, "Is he drinking beer?" And I don't want you to get a nasty email from
It's like
somebody.
some Mike's or
Yeah, or
lemonade or
something.
something.
It's
It
it's
looks like
not
it
though.
could be. I got you. Yeah, so we're
It's
setting the record straight.
Arnold
Just some
Palmer.
lemonade tea right there.
Stop calling me. Okay, and then the last one. This is serious. I was gonna bring this up. Elam Bible Institute. Bringing that
Mhm.
up. If you know somebody, Duke and I both went there. I not getting anything from this. Elam.edu, I think is their website. Great place if you're a young adult, or maybe you're a seasoned person that's looking for somewhere to go in life. You're wondering what God's calling you to. Check
Yeah.
out Elam. It is a great place to go physically, but they also have online classes now. You can get your degree. They have a degree. They have a everything, bachelor's. Not everything, but it goes up higher than it
Right.
did. Associates and bachelors, and you can go there. Elam.edu. It's a great place. That's where um, God called me and God called Duke, and I'm just going to give a little shout out here because I think they deserve some gratitude. So if you're
Come
thinking
on.
like, man, I
Love it.
don't know what to do with my life, if you're like a senior and you're not signed up to go anywhere, it's affordable. You can get financial aid. All that kind of stuff exists there, but it's
Mm.
also a place that you can get direction and vision. Like we were talking about meditating, that's a great place to meditate on the Lord. You'll be stretched, you will learn new things, meet people that are not like you from different places all over the world. And it's intimate and close. It's not a big, giant school. So you could be real close with the teachers. You could be really close with the staff. You have total access to everything. And
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent place to go for somebody looking for some direction in their life.
Amen. I support that 100%. That's where me and Josh Whippy met. It's where I met my wife. Um,
Mm,
yeah, it's an amazing place. I think you said last time on the show, man, that if people ask you, should I go to Elam? You're like, yeah, you should go, but mainly for your relationship with God and your relationship with people, you
yeah,
know. And these relationships, man, that came out of that and that have remained till this day are just so
right.
strong. And um, yeah, man.
And we
I
didn't we didn't get degrees back then. That would have been a sweet
right.
bonus, you
Yeah,
know.
we didn't even get a degree.
I got over here over my shoulder.
A
Where is it?
certificate of
Cer-
completion, right.
Certificate of completion right there.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's what I got.
I have the nice one too. I have it. I have a
Yeah.
thing under it is "Blessed are the persecuted" because I felt persecuted there. Yeah, that place
How
is
crazy
awesome
was
now, though.
NISA, man?
Back then it was crazy. Totally different now. Totally
Yeah.
different experience. Uh, the food's good. Everything's way better than it was when we were there. But
Oh, really?
yeah,
Have you
it's a
been
really
there
great place.
you've been there more recently?
Yeah, and pictures and stuff you can look. It's totally different. I think when Mike Kavanaugh became president of Elam Bible Institute, some things were changed
Ah,
there,
okay.
and just kind of got a little bit more up to date on some things and more of an enjoyable experience. So,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
definitely opened. If you open the elevator going from the second to third floor, I
yep.
totally,
It's like,
totally. Did you guys write your names on that?
I don't remember if I wrote my name or not. So
Yeah,
probably not, because 'cause I'd probably remember that, but I do remember it's like horror movie. Like,
yeah.
there's, like, this hidden floor
Oh, yeah, that too.
that
I
you're not
forgot about
supposed to
that.
get to.
There's some scary things, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that's all cleaned up now. It's all different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like if even when you walk in, it's gorgeous. It's crazy.
Wow.
So,
No, that's
anyway,
awesome. That's
so those
great
are my
that they're
plugs.
advancing. Yeah, that was an amazing experience, just, like, kinda living in the city. Well, it was in Queens, in Astoria, but kind of going all over the city and
Mm.
learning the subway system and just doing all that and doing all kinds of different ministry, experiencing all kinds of
We
things
were
all over the
there
city. It was
much
pretty awesome.
we were there for a lot longer than
Oh,
they
yeah?
are now. Like they're now I think 3 or 4 weeks, and
Ah,
I think
okay.
we were there like 6 or 8. So,
Yeah, I believe it was about 7.
7.
That's what was in my mind anyway, so 6 or 8, 7, something
And
like that.
you worked there?
Worked?
Did you work there?
Mm-mm. What do you
No.
mean?
So
Do you mean
when
like, uh,
you
like
just
at
went there with
NISM?
Elam, you didn't come
Yeah, I
back
just went
there.
there with Elam.
And
Yeah,
you know Roscoe?
junior year. Yeah,
Was
yeah,
talking to you about Roscoe Schnell.
yeah.
He's here. He was in Asia and can't get back right now. So
Yeah,
he
that's
stays at
right,
my
Uncle
church.
Roscoe. I didn't know
Mm,
that's who you meant when you
yep.
said uncle.
That's
That's
why I
where my
said it
mind
in
went when you
quotes.
said that, but I didn't know that I thought you had an Uncle Roscoe, like
No, I put it in quotes so that you would know. Anyway, for those who don't know, Roscoe is a missionary. Just be lifting him up in prayer. He's trying to look for direction where to go. The world shut down. He's been here since February of last year.
Mm,
So be praying for him for direction and for the Lord to open up some doors for him to get back into the mission field. And yeah.
I gotta get
So
Uncle Roscoe on the podcast, man.
oh, that would be cool.
Can
I'll
you
let him
hook me
use my
up?
set. Yeah, you can use my setup, or he can use my
Sweet.
setup.
Awesome.
That'd be fun.
Very cool.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Well, brother, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I love your blue microphone
Thank you.
cover, by the way.
Matches my shirt.
It does. It does.
I wondered
It
if you were gonna say something about it too.
brings out your eyes, you know?
Oh, thank you. I do have blue eyes. Yeah, that's what won my wife over.
Yeah,
It
right?
was my
Yeah,
I
me
mean, it
too.
was my eyes and my body.
Yeah. Hey, Josh Whippy, what is Whippy? What is your what
It's
nationality or ethnicity
Polish.
would that be?
It's Polish.
I thought you
I
were
think
one
we
of
I
those
think we talked about it
Polish
before.
people.
So the J is silent. That makes no sense, but it's Wypij. Sounds like a radio station. And
It's like
it
is
actually
there a J in pierogi? Is there like a silent J somewhere in there?
no, I
No,
don't
there's
know.
not. Okay.
Sometimes
Forget what I just
sometimes it
said.
ends that way. And it would actually be pronounced in Poland as Vypij. And you would hear it
Oh
as
yeah?
like it's the command to drink. So
Really?
Vypij Pepsi Cola, you'd see. Or if you type in just Whippy without my first name in Google Images, you will see a lot of Polish people getting schnockered.
Drinking.
Yes. Whippy, you know.
Vippy.
And my mother would be like, it means to drink the Holy Spirit, Joshua.
There you
Drink the
go.
Holy
There you
Spirit.
go. Be not drunk with wine, but be drunk with the Holy Spirit.
That's what she
Vippy.
said.
Love
Whippy.
it. That's
Whippy the
great.
Holy Spirit.
Yeah, so okay. Are you like 100% well, I don't think any of us are 100% anything. Are you fully Polish or are
My
you
dad is. My dad's fully Polish.
Yeah.
My mom's got a mix of everything, so it's in there. It's in the blood. You know,
Yeah,
I
man.
can still
I
say Polish jokes and get away with it.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's good. Polish jokes
Like,
are good. I'm about 50% Polish, I think.
oh yeah, okay, I'll
Yeah.
tell you. I'll
I
tell
don't know
you a
if it's for
Polish
sure
joke.
50%.
And
Tell
again,
me
I'm
one. I'll
Polish,
tell
so
you
I
one.
can say these. So I'm fine. Um, so this guy walks into a store and he comes up to the clerk and he says, "Excuse me, sir, do you have any Polish sausage?" And the clerk looks at him with his eyes like, "What are you talking about?" He looks at him. He says, "Polish sausage? What are you, Polish?" Well, the man becomes irate. He's like, "Polish sausage? You asked that because if I ask for German bratwurst, would you say I'm German? If I ask for Italian sausage, would you say I'm Italian? What's wrong with you?" The clerk is like, "Sir, calm down. Calm down. I didn't ask, if you were Polish because just strictly because you asked for Polish sausage. I asked you if you're Polish because this is a Home Depot."
Dun, dun,
Yeah,
that
I
was
love
good.
that one.
That was good.
What was
I'm gonna
yours?
tell you one that I'm sure you've heard because it's
Okay.
like a very generic Polish joke. Well, there's a bunch of these Polish jokes like how do you get a one-armed Polish man
You
out of a
wave.
tree? You wave at him, like
Hmm.
those. Those are good. They're all in good fun. I believe in making fun of everybody of all cultures and nationalities. So yeah, I think it's
There's
good.
something funny about that in comedy. Like, if it is true, like if there's a Christian comedian picking on us as Christians because he is one, then you're like, I love that. But if it's a
Yeah.
non-Christian person picking on Christians, then you're like,
Right,
it's not
right.
the same. Like you're not with us. You're something else.
You're against us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um well, I love so does everyone call you or I'm sure your family doesn't, but do most people call you Josh Whippy? Like you have one of those names that just kind of it makes sense to say the first and last name.
yeah.
Um is that a
Uh,
thing or is that just me? Does your
so like
family call you Josh or Joshua?
Josh. Yeah.
Okay.
So my wife, my mom, my dad, they call me Josh. There's a couple ladies in church who call me Joshua. My closer friends call me Whippy, obviously, or Whip.
Yeah.
That would be like,
Whip.
Jamie Gorman and those kinds of guys, Kevin
Yeah.
Ormsby. That's just what I've been known as. People in high school still call me that from high school. And I pastor in the town that I grew up in. So I have some people call me Pastor Whip or P Whip.
P Whip. I love
Yeah,
that.
P Whip.
Like
I'll
cool
take that.
whip. Yo,
Yeah, no
cool whip.
kidding. Yeah, I've been yeah, so I definitely fly under that banner. WYPIJ, it's just people who know how to say it.
WIPIJ. Talk
Radio
radio.
FM. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've won a free cat.
It's good. Yeah, you've got one of those cool last names, man. It just makes sense like for people to call you by your last name. Like I don't have one of those. Like I've never
Lamastra?
been, "Hey, Lamastra." I don't know. Just
I don't know, I
doesn't.
met a kid the other day, his last name is Hutchinson, and they call him Hutch, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's cool.
that's cool.
I like that.
That's a good name."
Yeah.
Yeah, Whippy it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, it's definitely a blessing because people remember it, but it's also a curse, like, when I'm getting a call from a telemarketer or something, and they're like, "Hello, is Joshua?" You could just feel the panic set in.
White Pidge?
Yeah, yeah. Or, like, when I'm calling and they're like, "Okay, can we ask who's calling?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is Joshua Whippy. Let me just spell the last name for you so you could pull that up because you won't be able to spell it,"
Is it
that kind of thing.
Whippie?
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
That was way too many letters.
It is also a little weird because some people just, they know me because of your last name, especially like in high school or playing in bands. So, like, I've been, in music my whole life, and they just assume that you know them. So they'll be like, "Hey, Whippy." And I'm like, "I don't know you. I wish I did, but now I feel awkward. Like, am I supposed to know you?" But
Yeah.
it's just having a funny last name. I feel like that's the thing that makes people think they know you. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
fine.
man.
It's fine. It's like a micro micro celebrity status
Yeah.
having that weird last name. But
Awesome. Well, hey, bud, thank you so much again. Thanks for coming back and being here, and, I plan on having you back
sweet.
again and
I'll
over
try
and over.
not to say
Hey,
the same stories again.
we gotta get you to catch up to Alex because last time you kinda you held that against me a little
Mm,
bit. Not gonna say I
yeah.
was offended, but,
Can you bring us on together? That would be fun.
that's what we'll do.
That's what we'll
That's what
do.
we'll do.
I'm
That's what we'll
down.
do. It'll be the culmination of my dreams.
He's not even
Actually,
answering my calls, though. He hasn't called me in like a
he
year,
hasn't ca
being a
don't
jerk.
worry. I'll hook it up, bro. We'll
I'm
get
calling you out right now on live real talk with Duke Lamastra. Alex, call me back.
full disclosure, this podcast only exists for this reunion between myself, Josh Whippy, and Alex Seidler. It's like three generations of Elam, right? Yeah, you
Yeah.
were yeah,
Oh, I do have
and,
another plug. I have another plug.
plug
See, there's my ADHD showing up.
plug it.
Um, the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. It's a podcast from Christianity Today. Really good,
Okay.
really good. Kind of follows that whole story, and it
Mhm.
goes even deeper into like the start of mega churches and how they
Wow.
were super seeker sensitive, and then the pendulum kind of swung over to like Mark Driscoll, which was the opposite of that, but he was successful because, it's really like, why do us as Christians, why are we more excited or more drawn to charisma rather than character is
Mm,
really the question. Like, why do we keep doing this? And it really talks about our culture that I think the church has probably given into a lot that gets us into trouble because we've hooked our wagons to, like we were talking earlier, it all comes together. We've hooked our wagons to what is success, and we look at
mm,
those people and they're doing things. Yeah, I guess it's why Trump became president, because they cared more about the charisma than they did the character.
mm.
But it's just what human nature does, and it's like, I think we need to be more aware of it. But it's a really good story, and it's not all just attacking Mark Driscoll or anything. I think it's well done to show the positives too. So it's very good. Again,
Wow.
Christianity Today. I think a rise and fall of Mars Hill. Really good.
Wow. Awesome. Sounds great, man. Well, hey, thank you again, brother. Appreciate you. We'll do it again soon. And yeah, thanks everybody for checking this out. You guys have an awesome day. Have an awesome 4th and be back Monday. Be
Bye.
blessed.